This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Grisella. I'm the director of the Greater Raritan Workforce Development Board, serving Hunterdon and Somerset counties. We have two main buckets of customers, job seekers and employers. This particular program is being presented for job seekers. We have a whole bunch of other programs that we present, virtual programs that we're presenting on an ongoing basis. You can find that information by going to our website, which again is www.thegrwdb.org. And right now I'd like to introduce, I would like to introduce Anne Corley Baum, the author of a few books on, two books in her Small Mistakes, Big Consequences series. And Anne has a very distinguished career. She is also the the Lehigh Valley Executive and Vice President, Distribution Channels and Labor Relations for Capital Blue Cross. And she's starting to share all her knowledge and experience that she's gained in interviewing people over a multi-decade career. Thank you, Anne, for taking the time to talk with us today. Oh, we lost audio.
You can't hear me. Now you can hear me. I said the most said words besides pandemic and COVID-19 in the year 2020 were "you're on mute." So.
There's also pivot. Pivot's another big.
Yes, pivot is also another one. That should definitely go in the top 10. Well, thank you so much, Paula, and thank you everyone for joining us today. What I would like to do is walk through a brief presentation to set the stage and then open it up for discussion for the group. The goal for today is really, here's the agenda. So we'll talk about our goal and cover things like courage, preparation, being present. And if you guys could mute on your end, that would probably help us with the echo. And my goal for today is to share knowledge from the street, some practical knowledge to help you succeed, and open it up to answer those questions that you've always wanted to ask, but never knew where to ask or were worried about asking the question. So we'll all be in the cone of silence today once it comes to the Q&A session. I wanted to start with a very basic concept that when you hear it, it makes perfect sense, but to do it takes effort. And one of my favorite quotes is this quote from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And he starts by saying, good is the enemy of great. And just let that sink in for a second. How often are we settling for good instead of going that extra step, going that extra mile to get to great? And quite frankly, how often do we settle for fine and not even for good? So today we're going to talk about some things that you can do to really push yourself to great on a regular basis, going that extra mile, delivering the very best version of yourself. So when you're out there, whether it's looking for a job, whether it's looking for a promotion within your organization, or whether it's just doing your job that much better, you can use these tools for all of those things. Now, our goal for today is to specifically focus on behavior and how it impacts your ability to succeed. So I will be touching on a number of items that I'd like you to put top of mind, because we don't often put behavior top of mind. We focus on a lot of other things, yet behavior represents such a significant portion of what you need to consider in your success. So let's start with a very basic premise, and that is that perception is reality to the person who you're meeting, to the person with whom you're interacting with. It's not fair. It's not equitable. It is nothing but our natural reaction to a person when we meet them. It's subconscious. We're not thinking of it when we are perceiving somebody else. So when you're the person in that interaction, you really want to think about how your behavior and how the way you're presenting yourself is impacting the assumptions that somebody is naturally making about you the instant that they meet you. And I'd love to say that everybody sees you and evaluates you for your whole person, but when somebody's looking to hire an individual for a role, they're on a time crunch. They've got piles of resumes. In some sense, they're trying to weed out people that they don't have, that they're trying to weed down that list so they can get to real candidates. And you want to get to that real candidates list as quickly as possible. So we'll talk about things you can do to really impact perception that will make that tremendous difference in your success. All right, now the first thing to do is you've got to think about how you're going to reach this goal and have a plan for success. And your plan might be sending your resume out. It might be contacting people on LinkedIn, but that's really just step one. Once you get that connection, whether you get that interview, you get that informational interaction, you're reaching out to your existing network, you have to prepare for what you want to succeed or you want to achieve in those interactions. So we'll be talking today about your preparation specifically, how once you're in that interaction to be present and really engage in the conversation and have that conversation be productive. Quite frankly, we're going to talk about having courage and being brave and being your best self and not letting your head trash get in the way. And then some things you can do to follow up so that you ultimately achieve your goal of whether it's the promotion or that next step in your career. So let's talk about preparation. When you're approaching an interview, you want to research the role, make sure you understand what skill sets they're looking for, and then highlight those skill sets when you're speaking to them in the interview process. Research the company, understand what business they're in. It's very easy to weed somebody out of an interview if they don't even know what business you're in or they haven't done research on the role. Research the people with whom you're interviewing. It's really easy these days to look up somebody's profile on LinkedIn and get a sense for that person. And quite frankly, know whether you're going in person, know where you're going, or if you're doing something online, test the technology. See how you look on screen. Because that first time when that screen shows up, they're going to make assumptions about you. And you want to make sure that your framework looks good, and this is kind of a nice thing. You can see yourself. You can see what you look like. Are you standing with confidence? Like right now, I'm standing. I think that's a great way to present yourself in an interview. When you're sitting in a chair, you can tend to slouch or move forward. Stand up straight. Be prepared. Get your camera angled well. Get good lighting around you. Make sure your background looks great, that you don't have pets jumping in and out. Now, everybody's much more forgiving these days with pets jumping in, and sometimes a pet could be an endearing addition to the interview, but try and avoid having those distractions come into the interview. Because when you're in that interview, You want that individual on the other side focused on you and how great you are and what you have to bring to this job and why you're the perfect choice, and not get distracted by things that are on your screen that pull their attention away from you and who you are. Now, when you're preparing, you're going to prepare and learn about the role and the people with whom you're interviewing, but you also want to prepare a list of things that you want to know from this company, because interviews are a two-way street. Yes, you want them to like you and pick you for the role, but you also have to understand this company, the culture, the job itself, to make sure it's a good match for you as well. So think of those solid questions, because there will be a time in that interview where they will come back to you and say, "Anne, what questions do you have for us?" And let me start by saying that question should not be, how much vacation time do I get? How much will I be paid? What are the benefits that you offer? You can't have that shopping list of things that are about you. I encourage you to ask questions about the role. For example, what does success look like in this role? What are the results that you're trying to achieve, or that I would be expected to achieve in this role? That shows that you care about results. It shows you're trying to understand the role. And it shows that you're not there shopping for benefits, but that you're truly there to be a part of this cohesive team. All right, let me stop there for a second and see, do you have any questions about preparation, researching the role, developing questions?
And I
Are
do.
you still out there? Okay, great.
One question, because I have been like looking into all the people in the companies that I'm looking at. Is it okay for them? Do we want them to know that we've looked, or should I put it on privacy so they see that someone looked but not have any clue who it was?
I am impressed when an interviewee goes out, looks at my LinkedIn profile, and invites me for a connection. I don't think you have to stalk them. I do find it a bit over the top when somebody gets kind of pushy with LinkedIn messaging prior to an interview. It doesn't always reflect poorly on them, but I think connecting with somebody and showing that you're doing the research is good. I don't see a downside to it.
One thing too that you did mention that we always want to remind people is the importance of LinkedIn today. And if you don't have a LinkedIn profile that you're working on and keeping current, posting from time to time, you need to really consider that, because people, recruiters, whether they're particularly a large company, but even small business owners know that's where they'll often look first. So it's really a key part of the entire process.
Well, that's an excellent point, and thank you for bringing it up to the group. Your LinkedIn profile is a window into you. Take the time to develop that LinkedIn profile so it presents an excellent version of you. For one thing, have a picture on there. I will not personally accept a LinkedIn request from somebody who hasn't bothered to put their picture on there, even somebody that I'm acquainted with. And the picture should be a professional picture, not a picture of you with a glass of champagne from New Year's Eve or something. It needs to be something that reflects you as a professional. And then look at how you are reflecting your job experience and the description that you give of yourself, and really take time to invest in presenting yourself well on LinkedIn. If you don't look great on LinkedIn and then you reach out to connect with somebody with whom you're going to interview, they click on you and see a not very well put together LinkedIn profile, it actually, Barb's earlier question, could work against you. So do take the time to invest in yourself through that LinkedIn profile. It's super easy to do, easy to edit, easy to understand, and there are lots of online courses, information. Paul, I'm sure you probably have resources to help people with LinkedIn as well, correct?
Yes, we do through our Skill Up platform, which is free to use for Hunterdon and Somerset County residents. There are online, the Skill Up is a virtual learning platform, and I think there are 3 or 4 separate courses about LinkedIn and how to post that you spend a couple hours at those and you'll be a master. We are also going to put on our website probably within the next 2 weeks a service in which we're working with a provider who will allow you to put your resume to have it basically scored and looked at, but they'll also do an AI on your LinkedIn profile and give you recommended improvements. It's an exciting new tool that we hope will help our job seekers.
That's excellent, Paul. And just another piece today we're talking about behavior, but as far as your resume, in the past, people would write their resume and it would be what it is. And whether it's your resume or your LinkedIn profile, you want to constantly evolve that to match the positions that you're seeking. So much of those initial screens are now taking place through computers. And if the keywords in your job description that you're pursuing don't match keywords in your resume, you won't even make it through that initial screen. So as you're looking for roles and see particular skill sets that they are seeking, add those to your resume or rearrange your resume to highlight those skill sets that you possess that they are seeking. There's a greater chance of you matching, not only through the computer screening, but also through just the interviewer's personal screening. When they see the skills they're looking for, that's going to make you more attractive to them. Okay, any other questions on preparation? Okay. All right, now let's talk about you're in the interaction. You're online, you're in person. You need to make excellent eye contact. Now, in person, excellent eye contact is looking somebody in the eyes. It's not in the mouth and nose where we naturally look. On video, it is looking wherever the camera is on your device. We're naturally drawn to look at the picture. So right now, I'm looking in the camera on my computer. Now I'm looking at Paul. Now I feel like I'm engaged, like I'm looking him in the eye, but you see what you are seeing of me is the side of my face. It is somewhat awkward to be having a conversation with a little camera on your computer or your iPad or your phone. But that's where you look. That's where you look as if you are looking the people in the audience in the eye. Does that make sense? Okay, great. The other thing I encourage you to do is put all your other devices away. This is also in person or via Zoom. If you're at home, the door is closed, quiet area, TV's off, phone is off, watch is off, email notifications are off. Give that person your full attention. not only is that the polite thing to do for an engagement with anyone, but it forces you to listen carefully to what they are saying. And you always want to listen to learn. Naturally, we listen to answer. And particularly in an interview, sometimes we're ready to jump in and interrupt and give them that powerful answer that we've prepared. And we may not even be answering the question that they're asking. So hold yourself back, be patient, listen carefully, look at the camera, or obviously in person, look at the person to show your interest, pause, and then deliver your great answer. It's okay to think and prepare in your brain the best answer. You don't have to be diving in as soon as the question is finished. Even though it feels uncomfortable to have silence, silence that precedes a great answer is very valuable silence. And it protects you from using filler words like so, yeah, I know. All of those things take away from your answer. They distract from the answer. You focus on listening, pausing, and delivering a slow and deliberate answer with a smile on your face. You've got a better chance of making that awesome impression. And remember that your answers are going to sell you. Don't oversell yourself and say how great you are and how wonderful you are. Now, don't undersell yourself either, but frame your answers in a way that sell your skill set. And when somebody asks if you've done something before, give them concrete examples and demonstrate to them your value and how, when they have something for you to do, you could take that and run with it. All right, I'll stop here for a second, see what questions you have about being present in the moment, listening, and preparing answers. Questions?
Not a question, but I think your advice is spot on. And a real example, I was talking with a business owner last year about something. We were talking about the issue of when he was doing interviews, and he is a small manufacturer or mid-sized manufacturer who hires people for line work and other a whole bunch of more manual jobs. And when he had an interview with a young person, the person actually, when their phone rang, said, "Hey, give me a second, I need to answer this," during the interview.
Oh, no.
So I know that no one on this call would do that, but but just as an example, this does happen, and this is why, some of this may sound like, oh, I know this. I think that a lot of times you forget, and to be reminded of the proper way to have success is really what this is about.
Yes, and Paul, your point is a great point. This isn't rocket science, but we forget. And particularly if you've been in the workforce or with a particular company for a period of time, and now you're coming back out, whether looking for that next opportunity or because there's been a reduction in force or a change in your workplace. And these things aren't hard to do. However, you need to be aware of them and really think of them. And so often we focus on things other than our behavior, other than our listening. Yet these are the things that can really undermine our interview and our success. And these are important skills no matter what you're doing. We're talking about interviews today, but this is about engaging with people sincerely in meetings and interactions. And so it's not limited to interviews, even though that's our focus for today. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, so every one of us has what I call head trash. It's that little, monkey on your shoulder that's telling you oh, you're not good enough, why would they take you? And I can't tell you the number of people with whom I've interacted that don't even apply for the job because they talk themselves out of it. They convince themselves that this company wouldn't hire them, or they're not skilled up for it. And I encourage you to get over it. Don't make assumptions about a role. If it's of interest to you, apply. Give it a shot. Take the chance, because it's a guaranteed no if you don't give it a try. 100% no if you don't give it a try. So you might as well give it a shot. Fight that fear, get out there, and I encourage you to build a team that I call your support tribe. And this is people in your network. It is colleagues, friends, family. It's people that know that you're in the market for a role. They understand your skill sets, and they can be out there to be your sponsor and find opportunities for you. If they hear about something that would match your skill set, they can pass it on to you. They're also there to just give you encouragement and help you along the way. But don't let your own head trash keep you from pursuing a role or talking yourself out of a role. I'll tell you one thing, and this is such an odd occurrence, and I see it primarily in women, but not always in women. And someone will come to the interview and will start talking, and they will basically talk me out of hiring them by revealing their head trash and saying, well, I'm not sure I could do that. Be confident. Get out there, give it a shot. You can find your way and learn the skills. I love the phrase, hire for attitude, train for skill. I would much rather hire somebody who's enthusiastic, who's a team player, and who's open to learn than somebody who is kind of curmudgeon and crabby and a negative attitude. So think about that. You don't have to know every job before you take it on. You just have to have the basic foundation that will allow you to succeed as part of a team. Now, I should say that's not true of doctor, astronaut. I mean, clearly you have to be trained in those particular skills. But for the most part, especially if you have experience, you can learn other roles and learn them really well. And you bring whatever you've learned along the way in your career to this point, you bring that to the table, and that's valuable to the organization that you'll be joining. So be brave. Okay, so we're going through the interview, you're working through, they ask you if you have questions. Your questions are amazing. Let them know you're interested in the job. Ask them what the next steps will be, what the time frame will be for a response. Send a thank you note. You can send it via email. You can send a handwritten one. Frankly, I love to get handwritten ones, but right now it's a little bit difficult because you're not quite sure where to send it. Most people aren't working from an office, so an email follow-up is great, but do send that. Let them know you're enthusiastic. Let them know you're interested. Let them know some key points from the interview that you want them to remember about you. And as we talked about earlier, make that LinkedIn connection if you haven't already done so prior to the interview. And you can use LinkedIn messaging to send that thank you note as well to them. We talked about this earlier, but remember that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And if the person with whom you're interviewing is rude, inappropriate, unprofessional, take that into consideration. Just because you're looking for a job doesn't mean you need to take any job that comes before you. And sometimes we feel like that, especially in a situation of a layoff or downsizing. We feel like, oh, we got to just take whatever that first opportunity is. And that's not the case. And it often doesn't work out. If you don't have a good feel about it, even when they offer you the job, the likelihood that that will last for an extended period of time is pretty slim and low. So remember that it's two-sided and you're interviewing them, and that'll help you formulate your questions as well for that interview. All right, so dream big. You know, the saying of when one door closes, another opens, or a door closes and a window opens. Look positively on an opportunity in front of you. Whatever has occurred to get you in the marketplace right now, whether it's loss of a job, whether it's your own decision to find something new, think big, take a risk, get out there. Give something a try. You'll be amazed what you can accomplish. And when you're out there, be brave, be your best self. Think about your behavior. How do you look? What is somebody going to assume about you when they see you? It's not fair. And I cannot emphasize enough. It is not fair, but it is reality. So prepare for it so that these behavioral components don't get in your way. And I'd like to end with two quotes. The first one is on the screen, and this is one of my favorites. It comes from Edgar Magnin, and he said that charm is the ability to make someone else think that both of you are wonderful. And when you think about an interaction that you have with somebody and they leave that interaction feeling good about themselves, they naturally feel good about you. And one of the key ways you end up making somebody feel good about themselves and you is listening to them and asking great questions and then listening to those answers, which means you're doing less of the talking and more of the listening. So just keep that in mind as you're approaching interviews. It can really help build that relationship. And then the last one, it's Eleanor Roosevelt. I know you've seen this one before, but the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And you are the only one who controls your path. And sometimes we feel like that's in the hands of others. But get out there, pursue it, see what you can accomplish. And another one of those, I guess I would call it a refrigerator magnet one. You know, shoot for the stars. Get out there. You'll land somewhere great. So I'll stop now with my presentation and see what questions you have for me. And I will unshare my screen too, I think. Paul, how do I unshare?
One of the problems I always have is how to start off the response to the question. I sometimes have been in the habit of starting off with saying, that's a good question. And somebody pointed out to me, stop saying that because they know their questions are good. So I kind of have a trouble just how to launch into that response.
Okay. That's a good question is your filler word. It's your pause. Yes. It's your, I'm going to get started. It's okay to pause. I like, if you need something as a filler, I like, thank you for that question. A little bit different, gives you a pause, but you can also just launch into your answer. If you think of a filler to use, what you'll find, Kathy, is you'll use that same filler. and you'll start every answer with that filler. An example I'll share with you is a colleague that I work with starts everything with, yeah. And just like that, like, yeah, and it startles you. Then they go to their answer. I would try it if it's at all within your ability to not have anything before your answer. Just get right to your answer. If you need something used, thanks for that question. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? And remember, cone of silence, you can ask anything. It's the safe zone.
One of the things I was wondering, you were talking about people forming an opinion about you. How long do you think it takes to form an opinion when you're interviewing somebody? And then another part of that question would be, say as you're going through the interview and you think, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I've probably made a bad response. How can you gracefully address that?
All right. First, the impression is instantaneous. As soon as their picture pops up on the screen, they walk into the room, we are automatically, our brains are making assumptions about that individual. So that's what's happening on the other side of it. That's why it's so important to think through what that first impression is. For example, if you're walking into a room, walk in with confidence. Even if you are absolutely shaking inside with nervousness, don't let it show. When you're coming into a GoToMeeting, a Zoom meeting, look at how you look. Make sure when that light turns on that you are ready to go and that you look great, that you're smiling, that you're not, I'll be a little funny, picking your nose or playing with or putting your lip gloss on or something. It's instantaneous. Make it great, because anything negative that comes from that first impression, you have to make up for. So why not start with a great first impression and maybe let it whittle down, as opposed to starting from a negative and have to build up. Now, if you make a mistake going through your interview, I would say with most of them, just keep going. To go back and identify what you think is a mistake might bring to the other person's attention something that they didn't see as a mistake. And that's the head trash thing, where we are so self-critical that something we perceive as not the best answer or a mistake might not be seen that way by the interviewer. They may not have even processed it in some way. So unless it's terrible, for example, like you said your name wrong. I say, my name is Amy Baum. Oh, shoot, my name is really Ann Baum. I would just go with it, go with it, go with it. Don't draw attention to a mistake. If they ask you about it, you can correct it. Don't bring it up unless they bring it up to you.
Thank you. And I wanted to mention, because I know we had some people join after we started, this session is being recorded and will be posted on our website, www.thegrwdb.org. So if you miss those first few minutes, you'll be able to catch up. So just as a note for those who are on, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to get that in, and then I forgot the question I was going to ask. God, I hate getting old. Oh, I know. So one of the things that, we're doing all of our work right now that was traditionally done in person in the Workforce Development Board world and our one-stops. It's all being done virtually. And one of the things we're talking about after we get through the worst of the pandemic and things start to come back to whatever that new normal will be, how much of that will we still do virtually? How much will we do in person? And I'm wondering, how do you think that whole thought process will impact the interview process?
There are a lot of things that we were forced to do through the pandemic that I think will stick around, and particularly the video interview. We had already seen a trend toward phone screenings for interviewing, and depending on the size of the company, there was already a trend for video first interviews. Companies are finding the value in connecting with people virtually, and it gives you an opportunity to keep your travel costs down, fit more into the day, and particularly as you're working through interviews, it really gives you an opportunity to see an extended list of individuals really from the comfort of your own home. That all being said, I think it's here to stay, the virtual interview, particularly at the early stages. As you get into the more serious positions and the more serious roles, I think you will see that in-person piece start to come back once the vaccine really is in place. There are some jobs where it's important to see the whole person instead of just from the neck up and understand how to interact with them. But I really think that virtual interviewing is not only going to continue, but probably be a standard in many roles, which is why it's important to become proficient in it. And even if it's not something you do every day, don't let anybody know that. Let them think this is your thing, you know it, you're good, you're completely knowledgeable of how this technology works, and present your best version of you via video.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Right. Oh, totally. Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, I don't mean to take everyone. If please ask your questions, unmute yourself. If you're more comfortable, you could also put it in the chat feature, either as a question directly to me or to the group. So please don't hesitate to ask the questions. We've got a great expert here. The author, as I said, of the Small Mistakes, Big Consequences series.
I'm wondering, you mentioned you should ask for the job at the interview, at the end of the interview. Does that mean that you're committing to take whatever that they might offer you before you maybe know more details, or like how do you sort of phrase it at that point?
It's not about accepting the job. It's letting them know that you are interested in the job. It's not committing, if you want me, I'm in, and I don't care what you're going to pay me. Not that kind of ask for the job. It is, I'm very interested in this role. What will be the next steps? That type of asking for the job. Let them know that this is of interest to you. So often you're seeing many candidates in a given day. And when somebody tells me they're interested, then I know that. When somebody doesn't tell me that they're interested, it's left to me to determine if they are. And if I didn't get a good vibe, I might assume incorrectly that they aren't interested. And you avoid that by letting them know that you're interested, you're looking forward to the next step. Is there anything more that they need from you? That's a great ending to an interview. That help you, Kathy?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, many of the people who come through our system are people um, who have worked at a position for a long time, and they haven't been in the position of having to look for work in maybe decades. What advice would you offer those people, that population, as they look for a job and get prepared for an interview?
The first thing I would recommend is to get small mistakes, big consequences for interviews, and then that will help you prepare. It's really important to step back and think through what all goes into a job search and an interview. And of course, your organization, Paula, has a lot of resources for people. However, it's important to plan for the interviews, the job search, no differently than you would have planned for a project in your previous role. Don't assume that because you got a job 15, 20 years ago that you remember everything that there is about interviews, resumes, and it also has changed. Do your research, go to classes, ask for help from people that are skilled like Paul's team, and prepare for this. Learn the ropes so that when you show up at that interview, it's not your first, you're not winging it. You should be well prepared for that interview. And it's hard when you've been in a role and sometimes in the same company for 10, 15 years, you don't even remember what it's like to sit in that interview chair. So taking the time to do your research, study, learn, that'll prepare you. So when you show up, whether it's on screen or in person, you're showing up with confidence and you'll do well in the situation.
Excellent, excellent advice.
Any other questions?
I have a salary question, and I just lost my connection for a couple minutes there, so I apologize if you had already answered this one. I had to switch to a better room. So it was a good learning experience for me for interviews. Go to the room with the strongest connection.
Good advice.
I was looking at some job listings, and pretty much every single one asks you with your cover letter to put down your salary requirement. That one always just stresses me out because I don't want to undersell, but I don't want to lose a job by overselling or over requesting. And so I'm not really sure how to even answer that question.
Barb, where, oh, go ahead, Paul, go.
No, yeah, I couldn't hear you. I thought we lost our connection, but you're there, sorry.
Oh, okay. So that was my pause while I was thinking of a good answer. So I didn't say, that's a good question. All right, so Barb, you know generally where you need to be, and you know what you wouldn't accept, right? I think it's good to give a range, and don't let that range start below something you would never accept. And that gets back to what we were talking about earlier. You're looking for a job that's a match for them and for you. And if it's the most perfect job, but they're going to pay you something that you can't afford to live on, or that's not acceptable to you, it won't work. So be honest, give a range when you can. Don't undersell yourself, because on the other side of the table, if I'm making an offer to somebody, do you think I'm giving that person the most money I could possibly give them as my first offer? No. because you know you'll have to negotiate and you've got budget and all sorts of things to consider. Be honest about it. Don't be crazily, don't say, oh, I'd like to make $1 million. Be realistic. Give a range when you can, and you're more likely to get a good match. If you need a certain amount of money and somebody can't pay you that, it's not a good match.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, Ann. Just to let everyone know, I am your publicist. However, I also have 15 years in the staffing industry. And what I found was they hear the question, but they don't know what's being asked. So do you want to go over some points or some questions and perhaps what answers would work with those questions? Maybe some that you find that are difficult when you ask them.
I think it's really important not to answer a question if you don't understand what they're asking. The likelihood that you'll give the wrong answer is pretty high if you're not clearly understanding what they're seeking. It's perfectly acceptable to ask clarifying questions, or if they're using a terminology that is maybe their internal language that you're not familiar with. Do your research. So if be familiar with the industry. You don't want to ask if you're interviewing for a job in the hospital, so tell me, what does a nurse actually do? That would not be a good clarifying question. But asking them, for example, what's involved in let's say they're asking you about a process, and then you ask them, well, what is involved in that process in your organization? Or when you talk about project management, what does that look like in your organization? And then that helps you further clarify what they mean in the question and allows you to prepare a better answer. Is that where you were going, Janet?
Yes. Also, even a question as simple as, what are your strengths? I used to coach people when I was placing them, and I got the most ridiculous answers. And so I think even just your basic question, or even worse, what are your weaknesses? Then they just talk themselves right out of the job they were going to be sent on. So what do you consider for anyone that's currently going on? I mean, for me, I used to tell them, pick a foreign language as long as you don't need it on the job. It's a great weakness and there's nothing they can say, but what are other answers people could give that, because that's, I think, still a pretty big question on, okay, what are your weaknesses? And then you just kill yourself right off the interview. So
it's really easy to tank yourself in an interview with simple questions, and you do want to step back and prepare yourself and think, when they ask me that strengths question, what are the things that match up with the skill set that they are looking for in that job description? Don't say I'm enthusiastic if it's a library position, or I'm enthusiastic and loud, and it's a library position, they need you to be quiet and reserved. Think about your strengths that match with the job. When people ask that weaknesses question, they're looking for who's going to tank themselves. And I love the foreign language angle, but also think about things that you can say that are weaknesses, but can be translated into strengths. So think about a particular weakness. Like, for example, what's one of your weaknesses? Well, I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I love to commit to my team. I'm always available. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're looking for somebody with that skill set. So flipping them, and I think a lot of people have moved away from those traditional questions, but they ask them in different ways. So when somebody's asking you about the downside of you, have answers ready that match up with the job description and showcase your skill set, and think through them. So when that question comes in whatever form it arrives, you're well prepared for it.
It's a great answer. Great advice.
Right, Paul, I see we're up against 158.
Yep, we did good.
Yay.
And I know someone's just joined us, and I mentioned and I put in the chat where this can be found on our website. Also on our website, we have that job seekers link has a whole bunch of information, including job postings that we post weekly for each county that have come into the National Labor Exchange. I'm just getting ready to post, I think, about 1,000 job listings that came in the last week. So that's another resource for you. Under the calendar tab, you will events calendar. You'll see our calendar. You'll see all the other free services that we offer, the webinars. We're starting to do virtual job session, virtual information sessions. And as I mentioned earlier, we have our free Skill Up online platform that if you sign up for it, if you're a resident of Somerset County, or you're an employee of a business in Somerset County, or even worked for that company, were laid off, and you still don't live in the county, but were laid off by the business in the county, we'll let you sign up for it as well. And it's a 6-month license, 24/7 for that 6 months in 5,000 areas of study. So it's another good resource, and a lot of them are in Anne's other focus on Anne's other book about develop your soft skills to help you succeed. A lot of our classes are in those soft skills, or the new word for them is employability skills, that I've been starting to hear a lot about.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. It was nice to virtually see you, and thanks for having me, Paul.
Of course, thank you. Maybe you'll kind of come again in the next few months to talk about soft skills.
I'd be happy to.
Great, great. Everyone heard it, and it's on the recording.
Okay. Great, I'm in.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a good afternoon, and I'm going to stop the recording.